不是举办那个相亲大会嘛，那场面啊，锣鼓喧天，鞭炮齐鸣啊。
In today's blind date market, if you're a man, especially going on blind dates in a place like Chengdu, then you're basically a hot commodity. Not long ago, Hangzhou held a grand blind date event. The scene was filled with the sound of drums and firecrackers, a sea of people so lively it felt like the whole city was preparing to get married. But if you took a closer look, you'd notice something strange. It was almost entirely women, with very few men. Many people have always believed that the number of men in China exceeds the number of women by about 30 million, so logically women should be more scarce and thus have an easier time finding a partner. But the reality is quite the opposite. In the actual marriage and dating market, men are more sought after. What causes this contrast? The reason is actually very simple. Many women are indeed too excellent, and coupled with the traditional social mindset of marrying up and marrying down, it further intensifies this mismatch in mate selection. When choosing a partner, many women naturally tend to look for men whose conditions are better than their own. A woman who scores 60 points wants a man who scores 70, and a 70-point woman sets her sights on someone who scores 80. This in itself is human nature, but the problem is, some women aren't seeking a realistic upgrade, they're fantasizing about a leap. In reality, many so-called single aristocrat women have stable incomes, refined lifestyles, and constantly post photos of baking, traveling, and yoga in their friend circles. They appear to live free and high-end lives. So in their minds they keep adding points to themselves. Originally a 60, after dressing up they feel like a 70, then mentally they elevate themselves to 80, and in the end they want to find a 90-plus male god on a blind date. However, 90-plus high-quality men are already extremely rare. How could everyone be matched with one? As a result, these women are unwilling to accept men who score lower than 90, yet in year after year of waiting and selecting, they miss the best window for marriage. Not until they're over 30 and finally attending blind dates do they realize the truth. Their actual market value is far lower than they had imagined. They come to see that their so-called high education, high income, independence and self-sufficiency might, in the eyes of men, still be less attractive than youth and beauty. By the time they realize this, they try to turn back and match themselves with the 70 or 80-point men, only to discover that these men no longer find them appealing either. They finally understand. The CEO from their dreams will not fall in love with a real-life leftover woman. In contrast, men have rarely been overestimated by society since childhood. Throughout their development, they've experienced more setbacks and harsh lessons from reality, so their self-positioning is much clearer. Knowing they can't compete with elites in places like Beijing, Shanghai, or Guangzhou, they consciously choose to settle in second- or third-tier cities. If they can't find a partner who matches all their criteria, they're willing to accept someone with slightly weaker conditions. They're more flexible and more realistic. As for some women over the age of 35, it's only when they're turned away by matchmaking agencies and their profiles are shelved by the matchmakers that they begin to truly realize. It's over, they're no longer in demand in the marriage market.
It's understandable that many women prefer to date men who are slightly better off than themselves. It's basic human nature. But the issue arises when some women aren't just aiming for an upgrade. They're living in fantasy. They believe that with a bit of self-improvement and curated social media, they can land the perfect male god. Coming up, we'll take a closer look at how this inflated self-image slowly leads them straight into the harsh grip of reality.
I'm already 38 years old, and I'm considered a typical high-quality older single woman. I have a master's degree and have been out of school for many years now, yet I'm still on my own. Honestly, I do feel that it's getting harder and harder to find a partner. It's not that I have unrealistic standards. My expectations for a potential partner are really not high, but I just haven't met the right person. Look at my own situation. I'm 1.68 meters tall. I only hope that the man could be at least 1.75 meters tall. That's not too much to ask, right? I have a master's degree, so hoping to find someone with at least a bachelor's degree sounds quite reasonable. I own both a house and a car, and I'm not even asking the other person to be especially wealthy, but at least he should also have a house and a car. That's not asking too much, is it? Also, my monthly salary is over 10,000 yuan. Looking for someone with a similar income, also over 10,000 yuan, should be within the range of a fair match, right? But reality has disappointed me again and again. The kind of man I envision is extremely rare in real life, almost impossible to find. As I grow older, the anxiety in my heart keeps intensifying. To be honest, it's not that I'm not trying, it's just that I really don't have any other way. But I've always wanted to actively get out of singlehood. So now I can only turn to online dating in the hopes of expanding my social circle. After all, China is such a big country, with such a huge population. Is it really possible that not even a single man would like me? I've always thought I was quite exceptional. How could it be that I just can't find a man who meets my basic standards in every aspect?
我今年38岁了，硕士学历，是一个优质的大龄剩女。
I am already 38 years old this year, and I hold a master's degree. In the eyes of others, I am considered a well-qualified older single woman. I once had high hopes that, in a first-tier city like Hangzhou, I would be able to meet an equally outstanding, similarly aged single man. But reality gave me a harsh slap in the face. It wasn't until I truly reached the age of 38 that I finally understood. Those men I considered excellent older bachelors had never seen me as a viable option. They would never choose a woman my age as their partner. Instead, the ones who approach me now are almost all single men from rural areas. Although their conditions are not ideal, they are genuinely looking to get married and build a life together. So if I want to get married now, I might have to move to the countryside and live there. This has made me realize a cruel truth. Women like us who are getting older actually have a similar position in the marriage market as men with no money. We are all seen as people who no longer contribute much value to marriage. So gradually, I've begun to shift my mindset. Looking back now, if there really is an honest, dependable rural man who is willing to marry me and give me a sense of belonging, then maybe that's a kind of good fortune too. However, deep in my heart, I still feel a bit unwilling.
Many older single women only realize after experiencing physical and mental issues that perhaps it's the long absence of romantic relationships that's truly harming their health. Despite spending a lot of money on wellness and self-care, they see little effect. Up next, let's hear the honest reflection of one such woman who fell ill.
Suddenly, I realized that the reason I've been suffering from a long-term imbalance of yin and yang in my body, endocrine disorders, poor complexion, facial spots, and an overall look of exhaustion and fatigue, might ultimately be because I haven't had a boyfriend all this time. If I had entered into a normal and healthy romantic relationship earlier, maybe all these problems would have been gradually adjusted and improved. But over the past 2 years, I've always clung to the idea of relying on myself to nurse my body back to health, and I ended up spending quite a bit of money sporadically on various traditional Chinese medicines aimed at regulating qi and blood, none of which had any real effect. The money was basically wasted. Not even counting doctor visits, just the cost of Chinese medicine alone over these 2 years probably would have been enough to buy a decent electric scooter for a boyfriend. Now when I look at the girls around me who have boyfriends, every single one of them has abundant qi and blood, rosy complexions, and an incredibly vibrant mental state. They speak with radiance, walk with confidence and energy. It honestly makes me feel both envious and helpless.
为什么大龄剩女都集中在北上广深这样的大城市？
Why are older leftover women mostly concentrated in big cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen? I come from a rural area and have been working hard in Shanghai for 7 or 8 years. I once had a job with an annual salary of 300,000 yuan. In my opinion, women become leftover in big cities not because they are not good enough, but because when they reach the age of 30, most men have already been driven away by the sky-high housing prices and returned to live in their hometowns. Even if they are not doing very well back home, their parents will usually prepare a piece of land or a wedding house for them. But women, faced with the same life pressure, it's much harder for them to choose to go back to their hometown, especially for girls from disadvantaged families, because once they return, matchmakers will only evaluate them based on their original family background. They won't care about your achievements in the big city, no matter how hard you've worked or how successful you've become. You will still be looked down upon. If you choose to stay in the big city, then you're left with only 3 options. The first one is to marry a local man from Shanghai. He may have a house, a car, and some savings, but the problem is if you value his financial stability, then you can't really expect much from his personal qualities. He may only have a primary school education, be just 1.6 meters tall, or even be bald, and you have to accept all of it. I thought about it, and I just couldn't bring myself to entrust my entire life to such a man. Those handsome, rich, and well-off tall, rich, and handsome men do exist, but for ordinary girls like us from outside the city, we almost never get a chance with them. The second path is to find a Phoenix man who, like me, is also working hard in a city far from home. I earn 300,000 yuan a year, he earns 400,000 yuan, and together we pool all our strength, maybe even drain our parents' savings, to barely settle down in the city. But the problem is, once I have a child, I might not be able to keep my high-paying job. At that point, the mortgage and supporting the family will all fall on this man's shoulders. Honestly, that kind of life is so exhausting I can't even imagine it. It's like there's no end in sight. The third path is to remain unmarried and childless, to continue being an older leftover woman. Keep working hard, stay independent and free. By the time you're 40, maybe you'll have a house, a car, some savings, and even official residency status. But at that age, an emptiness will inevitably creep into your heart. After working so hard for half your life, the results may not even entirely belong to you. Not to mention that women have to retire in their early 50s. Your golden years disappear in the blink of an eye. In the end, I haven't found a truly ideal answer. Faced with these choices, I feel lost. So I chose to escape, to a place where no one knows me, just to avoid thinking about these things for a while.
There are also many older single women who, after passing their 30s, have completely given up on romantic fantasies. Even their fitness goals have shifted from looking good to simply staying healthy. They no longer dream of falling in love with a CEO. Instead, they've come to understand the quiet joy elderly people feel when spacing out in the park, just watching handsome young men walk by.
30多就会对两性关系有一些不一样的感受。
After turning 30, I found that my views on relationships between men and women started to change. Although I've been on many blind dates, I gradually realized that romantic feelings account for almost less than 1% of my life. To be honest, the pleasure that love brings me now is far less real and satisfying than playing an exhilarating game of tennis. Moreover, it's impossible for me now to be like I was back in school, getting easily infatuated with a guy or constantly having someone on my mind. These days, I simply don't have the heart, the energy, or the kind of man who could move me, let alone the idea of falling in love. I just don't have it at all. What's more, I suddenly began to understand the kind of mindset older men have, which I didn't really get before. You know, when you see those elderly men sitting in parks, staring at a pretty girl for ages. Now when I see those sunny, handsome young guys, my mood inexplicably lifts too. Not long ago, a friend introduced me to a younger guy. He was quite interesting. He studied both his bachelor's and master's abroad, came from a good family, and loved working out. He often came to ask me, "Jeja, how's my progress lately? Have I improved?" And every time I'd say, "Wow, you look great, your body is amazing." But honestly, aside from thinking he looks good, I had absolutely no other thoughts. I didn't even have the slightest urge to have any deeper interaction with him. Now that I've reached this age, my approach to fitness has changed too. It's no longer about staying slim, but about staying healthy. When my back aches or my legs feel sore, that's when I realize how much I need to invest in my health at this stage of life. In the end, every phase comes with its own understanding and mindset. I suddenly realized, I must have truly matured now? At this point, I've completely lost interest in men. Staying single like this feels just fine.
The path forward for older single women is never about clinging to unrealistic fantasies. It's about waking up early, seeing reality for what it is, and making new, conscious choices. Times have changed. Marriage is no longer the only option, and the so-called Prince Charming was never real to begin with. The sooner one lets go of idealized illusions, the better the chance to find true happiness. Instead of waiting to be chosen, why not take control of your own life? What's your opinion on these older single women? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. See you in the next video.